experience. I would say is an expert in the area. So he will give a presentation on the truth about monitoring. So that will be the first part. And then the second piece of the presentation will be from our CEO, Jack Shearman, and he will talk about the Substation Best Practices Collaborative overall, the path forward, where we see it going, how it fits into the current kind of where substations are right now and where we see that going into the future. So give some enlightenment on that and how the program will go for the remainder of the year and future years. Just some housekeeping items. You all will be on mute. Will not be able to, I believe, not be able to take yourself off mute while there's presentations going on. However, there will be opportunities to ask questions. Once Doug is finished presenting, we will open it up to questions. And then once Jack is finished presenting, we will open up to questions again. But also I want to just, like any Microsoft Teams webinar or I guess meeting that you've been on, there is the chat box available. So if you do have a question during the presentation, feel free to enter a question into the chat box. Both myself and my colleague Ford will be monitoring that and we can bring it up during the questions piece. Additionally, if there's anything that you think of after the meeting, you can feel free to reach out to me. I can get that to Doug. And we can also just make our contact information available. So feel free to reach out that way as well. A couple other things, this presentation is being recorded. So just keep that in mind. This will also make it available to a lot of people maybe that could not attend, or maybe someone that might be interested after the fact in seeing this presentation. So maybe if you want to watch it again or something interesting you saw or forgot, we definitely make that available. And I think that's everything. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over, I guess, the baton to Doug Van John from Evergy.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. I really do feel humbled being asked to present in front of all of these folks. All of y'all are smarter than I am, I'm sure. I'm guaranteeing y'all something that you're going to learn through this presentation. You will learn something, and there might be a quiz afterwards. Don't know, but we'll see how much time we have. I'll go ahead and get started with my presentation, and it has to do with monitors. And I've got a couple of other things that I'm going to throw in the middle of this having to do with monitors. And so without any other, let me see if I can't. There we go. Aces, Kate. So the truth about monitors. I know a lot of utilities have put in monitors. I know there's a lot of frustration with the monitors, and there's different types of monitors. And it seems like every week I get calls from vendors. Hey, we want to sell you a monitor for this. We want to sell you a monitor for that. Another monitor, and so that's all well and good. I tell these vendors that, you know, the easiest thing for me to do is write a PO and purchase a bunch of monitors. I can do that real easily, but there's more to it than just that. And so the rest of it, the pros about monitors. When we start talking about using a monitor, the main reason we'd want to do that is for live data feeds, get the most recent sensor readings, get up-to-date health analysis. We want to know what our equipment is. That's why we'd put a monitor on. We have monitors on our vehicles. We have monitors everywhere in our life. Why not have them in substations? The thing that always kind of concerned me is that the electric utilities seem to be a little bit lacking in getting that out and revolutionized. But in today's culture, I can see why. We have a lot of threats against the utilities from outside sources wanting to attack us. And if we get communications in there, we get too much exposure to that, we can run ourselves into trouble. But asset comparison, setting criteria, a relational database between this asset and that asset, age, manufacturer, model, style, load duty, whatever the case is, you can start to gather and yield a lot of information about your assets. And you can start to do algorithms that will tell you if you have an asset that's starting to age early. And you can also work it out so you do some condition-based maintenance on that asset in a timely manner instead of waiting for maybe that one check. So event logging allows you to go back in time. We use event logging here at Evergy all the time. An event occurs, a fault occurs, we gather this data from this substation or this relay and that DFR, we start packing it all together and we're able to break that event down back in time, millisecond after millisecond after millisecond. Trending, we have to do trending. Compliance fulfillment. That's something that's really become more of a pro in the last few years. We use this data from our monitors for our compliance. Um, we have our regulators that come to us. We have our insurance companies that come to us and say, hey, are you doing this? Or what's the health of that? And if we can pull this monitored information up, or we can pull information up to show that we are doing something, they're usually quite satisfied with that. And of course, reduce maintenance cost. But there's an ugly side to the monitors too, the cons. Um, we've all had that. If we've had monitors out there, things that just drive us crazy is incorrect data. You get some information in and it's not right. The monitor is drifted, it's lost a sensor, or communication errors, or it's whatever the reason is, we start getting incorrect information. And when we start to rely on the monitors, we have to keep an account of what the monitor is monitoring. Are we getting the parameters needed to do an accurate health analysis? Sometimes these monitors only have a few gases for a transformer, or a few things for a breaker that doesn't really give us all the information. So we've put on monitors, but we really didn't hit the ball. We just missed it. We put stuff on there, but it's really not enough to give us a good value. And so asset comparison, um, when we start looking at assets, we can't always get what the vendor specified that asset to be. We're not able to reproduce the vendor specifications. So it gives us some false positives there. Event logging, and I was talking about earlier, going back in time, and trending, data gaps. If we don't have if the monitor quit and we're missing, June through September, we end up with data gaps in there. So we have to make sure that we're monitoring our monitors. Compliance fulfillment, if we don't have all of the parameters out there that we're lacking, we're tracking through a dashboard, we're keeping some type of notification that hits our email or our cell phones or something that says, hey, I'm out here and I'm not working, I'm not healthy. Now the other issue that I've really had with some of these monitors, some manufacturers of monitors have been the black hole. We've purchased them, we've put them in service. A few months later, they quit working. We go back out, we work with a vendor, get them back up and running. A few months later, they quit working, and we're in this black hole where we just keep dumping money into this thing and dumping money into this thing, and we just never can get it to work correctly. And they keep promising, hey, you'll get it, and look at all the things you can do, and we just never really get there. The other thing that really drives me crazy when we start talking about the cost of putting in monitors is the additional things: software settings, calibrations. Some monitors use some carrier gases. There's other consumables that go along with our monitors. And so we're trying to get up O&M dollars, but we actually add O&M dollars because of trying to take care of the darn monitors. So again, monitoring the monitors. And then false alarms. If we have incorrect data, we have faulty sensors, things like that, we get this alarm that this is in trouble, and we roll a truck and we go out there and find out, yeah, that's really not the case. So it's a bit of a struggle. So there's a lot of pros, some of the cons too. So it's kind of a minefield. You have to use a good quality vendor to be able to supply all this to you. That brings me to vendor support. And I know all of you utilities that are out there are not utilities that are saying, hey, we have plenty of people to do whatever we want to do. In fact, we have all kinds of support in our own company. We're not hiring any contractors. We're not hiring any additional folks. We have plenty of people to do the work. Well, that's not the case here at Evergy. We're on the struggle bus a bit to make sure that we can keep up with all of the work, the workload. And then the other thing is we end up with people that are approaching retirement age. So we have attrition. And those people leave, a lot of knowledge goes away with them, and you're trying to bring new people on. So you're trying to get them up to speed and get them the knowledge and the talents that they need to perform. And so vendor management becomes an issue. If you can get contractors in or vendors in that have completed training, safety training, and do some testing so they can actually come on site unescorted, or they can actually do work for you, call you up. You can work them like almost a nested contractor, where you can use them on any different issue that you might have. And so that's a positive thing, but that takes management. That doesn't come easy. It doesn't come free. So if we have to escort our vendors, we have to have a qualified person to do that. Takes away from the regular work, maintaining the data. Some vendors we've worked with, or at least I've worked with, are telling me, yeah, we'll maintain the data for you, and we'll do some monitoring, and we'll maintain that data. But as soon as you stop paying that yearly service fee, which is O&M, guess what? You lose all of that. It all goes away. So you have to be able to work your contracts out so you bring that stuff on-prem, so you can have access to it in a future time. Data extrapolation, running off the end of the chart is what I call it sometimes. This is something that is non-negotiable for me. Pulling data from multiple sources. We have to be able to use some type of a dashboard, some type of an analytics, the maintenance management system that pulls data from multiple different sources, not just your monitors. You can't rely on just that as one source of information. You have craftsmen out there that are doing inspections. You got to be able to pull that in. You have contractors doing testing. You got to be able to pull that stuff in. You have weather data. You got to be able to pull that stuff in. There's all kinds of information out there that really starts to complete the overall picture of health analysis for an asset, but it takes different sources of data. So if you're not actually out there and you've not actually built something that can look at multiple pieces of data, maybe it looks at your SAP, your Maximo, your Cascade, your PeopleSoft, your historical data from TOA, whatever the case is, you have to be able to bring all that stuff in and do some extrapolation with that, because you can have different sources of data that are conflicting. And so that also allows you an option to be able to audit that data. So having historical data for each asset. This is the stumbling point for us. This is something that I have really struggled with. And we have contractors that are coming in, they assemble a transformer, they assemble a breaker, and they test it. And then I get this call that says, hey, Doug, it's tested and ready to go. Oh, cool. Do you have the data for that? Nope. It's just ready to go. So next time we want to do a test on it, we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have that base. And so this is something that is a bit of a challenge to get. Different folks in our company run different contractors. They don't always know the standardized tests, the standardized test equipment, the files that we need to be able to bring all this together. So what's very frustrating is you have a contractor that comes on site, assembles a transformer, assembles a breaker, puts in a switch gear. They say they've done all the testing, and then a few days later or a few weeks later, you start pouring through all of those files and you find out, hey, they didn't do a winding resistance test. I need that winding resistance as a base test. You call them up, they're in another state, they're gone. We didn't see that as a standardized test. So it is a bit of a management issue that we have to do. Knowledge about the data. What do you really need? We have gone through an era where we wanted to have all the data, anything at all, and all the data possible, anything at all. The color of the clouds that day. It's just so much data, it becomes data overload it's not useful. So you need to have somebody that can kind of pour through that data and find out this is really something that is useful. We want to keep that data. And then the ability to modify the calculations. We've dealt with some vendors that have come in and done some calculations for us, and they want to keep us on a retainer. As soon as we let that retainer go, all of that source code goes away. We lose all those calculations. We lose all that data. It all just poof goes away. So that's also something that you need to monitor when you're monitoring your monitors. So data extrapolation, we use Power BI now. We used to use Tableau, and this is a screenshot from one of our battery health test data. We, as the craftsmen go out and do the test of the battery, they're doing an impedance test, and they do other testing with the batteries, but they upload it to our Cascade system. The Cascade system at night uploads it to our data hub. The data hub is we can pull that with Power BI, bring that data in, and we can do all kinds of calculations with that. We can export this, we can build graphs, we can do all of that stuff. Hence back to the statement I made about some vendors are doing the analytics and then you lose the source code and you can't do anything. So it's really, in my opinion, it's advisable to keep some of that information in-house. We have to be able to modify it if we need to. So I'm going to show you a picture here of a little bit of a transformer, but this is one of our transformers that I was perusing earlier this week, and you can see that we've had a definite step. We happen to have landed on Camlin Energy for our monitoring systems for the transformers. And this is, of course, the DGA. The creme de la creme of transformer health is DGA, but it's not everything. I would like to point that out in the later on in my presentation. But here's obviously something had occurred. Now, if you're just monitoring that stuff once a year or that case might be, you're going to miss this data. Is this data really valuable? Is the juice worth the squeeze? I think it is in some cases. The gotcha about this particular piece of equipment is we put a monitor on because, well, it's 70 years old, almost 71 years old now. It's close. And some people wouldn't allow a transformer to be in service for that period of time. I do have some transformers out there that are 99 years old, and I hope we keep them one more year so we can have a century-old transformer in service, carrying load. Now we're doing testing on those to make sure that oil testing on those to make sure that they're still functioning as they were designed, and they are. They have a different trend. You kind of have to look through a different set of goggles to make sure that they're healthy. But my point is, some of the monitors that we talk about, we put monitors on brand new equipment coming into the company. Well, that may not make as much sense as one might think. It's capitalized right at first. It's already installed, but the life expectancy of the monitor isn't as long as the transformer. And so here's more data extrapolation. We start to color code different battery cells that are in trouble. You can start to see some trending here. I've got another chart that I run that uses an algorithm that runs this out to where we think a failure would occur, and we kind of extrapolate that year out of there. The problem is there's so many assets that we're dealing with now. I have a small group of individuals that work with me on this, and we're viewing about 100,000 assets now in our maintenance management system. And so you've got to kind of stay on ball with that. And then, of course, there's other points of data that come in. If some of you are familiar with the Camlin First Trip, the P3 device, this gives us trending, or gives us an analysis of our breakers. And the top line up here is the voltage that occurred during the process of tripping this breaker, and then the timing, the trip coil signature, how it reacted, trip 1, trip 2. This is really pretty good. We have the initial trip is in the red here. The blue is the second one, and it got slightly faster, but not much. No, so we're still talking about a 40 millisecond breaker, which is pretty good for a distribution breaker. But when I was talking earlier about pulling multiple sources of data in, so when we use this particular piece of equipment, our craft folks all have cellular cards on their laptops. When they do this data, they pull that in to their laptops, and then they upload it to a database, the same database throughout the entire company. Evergy is made up of the old Westar and the old Kansas City Power and Light group, all merged together in one big happy family. And we're pulling all this data across all of our company together to make analysis on different, breakers, manufacturers, ages, things like that you can start to extrapolate some data that tells you, what do you need to work on? What is it that's in trouble? And so without this data, and this is not necessarily from a monitor, this is from a test. But what I was telling you is that monitors can do one thing, testing can do another thing, and you need to merge that together with inspections and knowledge of the assets. Go back to the vendor and get the vendor specifications from the start and mold this all together into one cohesive measurement. I tell people all the time that data is expensive, information is priceless. And this kind of tells us that information. We have a breaker here that's not in trouble. And so we can move on. So monitor life expectancy. Some of these things, these monitors we've had, seems like about 10 years, we start to have a fair amount of problems with them. And so does it make sense to put them on a transformer that is going to last 70 years? Maybe you should wait a few years before you put the monitor on. That's what I showed earlier, that monitor that was showing the DGA analysis of that one transformer in our fleet today that's still carrying load. And that's almost 71 years old. So yeah, we waited a while to put that on there because, well, we started seeing some degradation through our yearly testing. And I still think that that's a valuable thing to do, is go to your substations, pull a yearly sample on the tap changer oil, on the main tank oil, and start to see how it's trending. And if you start to see some concerns and the asset is a high valued asset, I highly recommend we put some monitors on there and bring that information back. Do I think a monitor needs to go on every single asset in a substation? I completely do not. I think that is not wise use of our money. So transducers failing. We've had some issues with a certain vendor that had bushing transducers that caused false alarms all the time. Now, what that leads to is the little boy that's calling wolf all the time. In this case, we're calling bad power factor. And many times those false alarms, doesn't take very often when you start getting craft and supervisors and management, other people involved with it start saying that was a false alarm, that was a false alarm, and that's a false alarm. So we're not going to believe any of it. Cut it all out. We're just stopping. So you have to, as stewards of these assets of the monitors, as good stewards of that, we need to make sure that we're monitoring the monitors and keeping that data accurate. So you might want to filter that data out. So that means that you need to keep an eye on it. I'm not necessarily saying that we should, every time we have an alarm, we should red light and siren and roll a truck and take a piece of equipment out of service. If we're doing our jobs as good data analysts and as good asset managers of our company, we're going to be able to see this long-term degradation. And we're going to be able to put monitors on those things that are nearer the end of their life. So what we don't want to do is start giving a bunch of false hopes that we've got everything caught, and we don't. And so the other thing that you have to be cautious of and cognizant of is just because you've put a monitor on a piece of equipment doesn't mean it's not going to fail. You can have those unexpected outliers, those 6-month-old pieces of equipment that all of a sudden flash internally because of maybe some debris left at the factory. That's an unusual case. It happens. But if you think you're going to catch every needle in a needle stack, I think you're wrong. We need to make sure that when you talk to your management, you talk to your craft, you talk to your operations folks, that these monitors are out here for more of a long-term health analysis. They're not the ones that are going to catch that transformer just before failure. And by the way, I've found through my 38.5 years with this company that if I ran a piece of equipment to the last week of its life, nobody ever gave me a gold star. They always remember that time when you missed a piece of equipment. So monitor often and analyze your data often, and make sure that you've got that plan out there that says this stuff needs to be replaced or this stuff is ailing, and try and get that information out as quickly as you can to your folks that are doing that work. Give them time to actually do their business. And so one of our failures in the past was we decided that to save money, we'll just put a DGA monitor on it that monitors one thing, like a hydrant. And that was not a successful project at all. Not for us. It didn't give me any meaningful data. And when you start looking at the statistics of hydrogen and the way it's created, and start looking at how it's developed and what develops it, you find out real quick that is not a thing to do. The other issue you have to do with software integration issues. a monitor fails to work, they get an upgrade to it. You have to run out and upload new firmware to it, new software for your system. You got information to put back into the data hub. It's all that stuff. So it is really a maintenance issue. So going forward, life of the communication network, cellular is getting updated, 3G is going out, 4G is coming in, 5G is coming in. You have equipment vendor changes. You have one vendor that is purchased by another vendor, and they're going to migrate to their technology. All of a sudden, the stuff that you have in service is no longer supported. And so you need to make this somewhat componentized so you can easily remove stuff from service, put stuff back in. I really highly suggest you go to a company-owned network. As protocols evolve, you can manage that on your own within your own internal company. If you hire that stuff out, you kind of lose control of it. You lose the guidance of NERC. You have issues with possibly exposing yourself to somebody hacking into your system. And then challenges, consistency of readings. One of the things that is nice about getting a monitor out there, you do not need arc flash, clothing restrictions, hazard control, stuff like that to read it. You can do it from your phone in a lot of cases. You can do it from your laptop. Those things are not an issue. The other thing is I can go from one station to another station 200 miles apart in a few clicks of a mouse. Well, that's pretty beneficial when you start looking at your more expensive equipment, your more high value stuff. And then the one thing that we all have to do as vendors or as utilities is separate the operations. The system that's controlling the voltage and opening and closing breakers and checking the alarms of the system, that's a separate network. That's restricted. You should not use that. You should come up with your own communication path and use that as a separate path going to a separate database, to a separate hub, and start using that to fulfill your MMS needs without going out to let's say, or your EMS system. And so monitors are necessary and can make financial sense. They're not the blanket answer. That you just can't say we're putting a monitor on there and that's going to take care of all of it. As the last statement I have on here, it's set it and forget it is not acceptable. We need to use multiple sources, some of your monitors, but you also need your relays and power factor and other information that's coming in to get a cohesive network of information to actually come up with knowledgeable health analysis for your assets. And so we need to also make sure that we're evaluating the cause, not the problem. We see gases elevate and it's like, oh, let's focus on getting rid of that gas. No, why did the gas develop? That's really where we should be looking at. And so looking forward, I'm venturing off in a new world of a different type of monitoring system. And one of the things that we talk about, what I would like to get done, and I don't have it done yet. I'm working with Hitachi on this, and I'm going to show you some photos here in just a minute. But I would like to have a substation that has hundreds of cameras. Now, do I want to look at any of those images? I hope to see 0 images. I don't want to see a single image. The IR scanning, acoustics, weather conditions, things like that, I want to see from our substations. But you may ask, if you want all these cameras and this IR scanning, and you don't want to see any of the images, I might have to see an image or two. But what I really would like to see is all of these points of data, machine learning, putting information into my data hub where I can pull it back in tabular form and I can start doing analysis on that. Again, I'd like to be, I am Yeti of data analytics. And for those of you that are acronyms, that's Yoda. So you can call me Yoda. But all of this information that I've shown on here, these are points of data when I send a person out to go do a substation check. This is not the entire list, but I want to have information from the substation. Some of these we can't get when we do an inspection, but hey, if we had some type of monitoring out there, some type of sensors, and the cameras being a sensor, we can start to pick all of this stuff up. Imagine if you could see all of this information in tabular form that comes up on a dashboard. That every morning you get an alert or something on your email that says, hey, come look at this. We got an air leak over here. We've got an air compressor that started 4 times in the last 24 hours. Oh, I want to know that. We're going to evaluate that and see if we can get somebody out to fix that leak. Oh, hey, we've had a really windy day in Kansas, and that's not unheard of. Kansas is a pretty blustery state. We got some trash blowing around the substation. So that's not a big deal, except it's a big plastic bag and we're scared it's going to get caught up in the bus. Well, if that gets caught up in the bus, we could flash across, cause an outage, something we could prevent if we knew about it, but we don't know about that stuff. What would really be handy for our engineers is if we had enough cameras with good enough accuracy, they could actually just log into our system, get a picture of the nameplate, and see what it says on the nameplate. They can look at designs and the way it's built, things like that. So there's a ton of stuff here. And so one of the things that I would like to talk about is a venture that I'm trying to get started, but I don't really have it all kicked off yet. And that is a 3D or a touchless substation. Some of you folks have seen this. I've displayed this before, but we've done some 3D imaging at the substation. And in my mind, if we had cameras that could do this, I could zoom in and look at these gauges with a camera, or I'd have a camera set up someplace where I could look at all those gauges. Machine learning that would be able to tell me what that gauge reads. I don't want to look at the picture and figure out what that gauge reads. I want to be able to have the machine learning tell me what the oil level in that bushing is. Has anybody ever found a monitor that will monitor the oil level in a bushing? I don't think so. How do you do that without doing some type of visualization analytics? Thermal for switches and terminal connections. Be able to look at the yard and see if we have any type of vegetation growing in there. If we want to know if the transformer is on step, we can simply look at the camera, zoom in, and we can see the little needle there. This is a Rheinhausen tap changer, and this says it's on step, and this is the step it's on. Wouldn't it be nice if you could remotely operate that thing and then visually see it move? That's behind here is a Deskin breather. Let's see what the color of the Deskin is. When the fans come on in the summertime, we got a temperature alarm. Let's see if all the fans are running. We just simply pull up that image. We can take a quick peek at that and see what it is. If the fan's not running, machine learning should tell us, hey, the fans came on and these 3 should be running and these 3 should not be running, and there's a discrepancy in the data. Being able to see the thermal of an arrestor, the SF6 of a gauge, check and see again if we have some vegetation growing in our station, if we need to get our vegetation management out there to do that stuff. Let's say we have some potheads here for underground cable. We want to see if any of that's leaking. No, that all looks good. Oh, let's look at this one over here. So we can take a peek at that and see what's going on over there. And sorry. So if we did end up with a bad person or two in the area and they want to cut grounds, we can see all the copper grounds. There's a ton of information here that we can see. The status of these circuit switchers, if the circuit switchers are leaking silicone. What I would love to see us get to, we don't have it yet, I would love to see us have a sensor in each one of these cabinets. Visual sensor, thermal sensor, to be able to tell, doesn't have to be highly accurate, tell what the temperature of the connections are. Acoustics in here, see if we have any fuzzing, if we got any dirt on the switchgear cabinets, things like that. So there is a ton of things out here that we can gain from having multiple sensors. Now, if we replace this transformer, guess what? Machine learning identifies it's a gauge. We automatically just map that. Boom, we're back into the system. We're gathering data again. And so using all of this data, I think we can be better stewards of our substation. I think we can better compliance. We can take care of our customers. What I'm looking for is a better employee experience, a better customer experience. I want our management to feel like we have their back. We're watching out for the data. We're taking care of it. And so anyway, that's what I wanted to present to you. And Kate, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And if there's any questions, I would love to. I'd love to talk about it. And Kate, you know me, if I knew a fence post would stand still long enough, I would talk to it.
Yes, Doug. No, that was great. Thank you so much. So we did have a couple great comments come in from San Diego, and we also have a few questions that came in from Mark Christensen. So I'll start with one of those. It says, are any of your monitors tied into a relay to clear the transformer? If not, what happens during the graveyard hours when you're sleeping and a warning alert gets emailed out by a monitor?
Yeah, so the way my philosophy is, the transformer is in good health because I'm a good asset manager. I shouldn't have those alarms. I really shouldn't have those, but in case they do, the typical operation of the substation is still going to be handled through our system operators, our distribution system operators, our transmission system operators. They're on staff 24 hours a day to make sure that the system is working appropriately. And so I trust in them that they will make the right decision and call whoever the person on call is and let that person make those decisions. Just to make sure that we have a human making some of those decisions. I've found, as I've stated in my document here earlier, that sometimes we get a false reading from a sensor. And I do not want, I am 100% against having false reads come in from our sensors and dispatching people just willy-nilly. I don't know if that helped Mark or not.
Ford, I'm assuming people are off mute too. They want to. Yes, he said thank you.
Yeah.
And then another question from Mark is, have you discounted your yearly manual sampling intervals for a little savings? We are considering it at this point.
I have 100% not discounted that. I absolutely want somebody there on a yearly basis to walk around it. I think there's a lot more information to be had from somebody, a talented individual walking around that station and looking at these transformers, listening to any noises that might be made, looking at the terminal connections, looking inside the containment and making sure that there's not a lot of dirt and debris and stuff in there. I really feel like a yearly sample is not too much to ask, and keep the folks tied into what their jobs are. If we take all of that work away from them, we're going to start to lose that skill set, and we've already struggled with that just a bit. So I'm 100% on board with keeping that yearly sample, at least a yearly inspection, if not more, and having somebody in there. We're going to probably have somebody in anyway to change a nitrogen bottle or something like that at some point in time. But changing those expectations for those crew members when they're in there to look everything over and give us a good visualization. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for allowing me to come off mute. I appreciate that. And then my last question, I don't want to be the one asking all the questions, but wireless, Doug, do you have any monitors that you have wired to a SIM card where you don't have it hardwired in?
Yeah. In fact, all of the oil monitors that we have are all on a SIM card right now. So we've brought that in through SIM cards. It's been a challenge to get our IT security group to allow that on our own network. And again, if there is a differentiation between that instrument and, let's say, control, somebody could break into that. They can't control anything. There's nothing. There's no NERC SIP issues there. You can look at it. They could get in there maybe and turn it off, but that's not going to cause us to fail a transformer or take it out of service. The information, as I said earlier, I don't want any of this information to be used as, got to respond now, we got to get this out of service. None of that. If it's going to trip out of service, it's going to trip out of service. This is more of an asset management piece. We're looking for that long-term degradation or even that short-term degradation within 6 months. You guys all know that to purchase a transformer, if you're a person on the street to go purchase a brand new transformer like today, you're likely to see somewheres in 100-week, 200, 150-week delivery times. You may already have some agreements with manufacturers that allows you to get in quicker, but if we're not looking at least 3 years out for our asset replacement strategies, we are failing.
Thank you, Doug. I'll hold my next question and let some others go.
Yeah, so we'll open it up to questions. I'm not sure. I think I can mute you individually. I'm not sure if I can unmute you all at the same time. I didn't know if anybody had anything through the chat, or you can let me know and I can unmute you if you let me know through the chat.
While those come in, I can
Yeah,
send my next one.
absolutely.
Okay, Doug, I saw your awesome 3D imaging through the substation, and I gather you walked through there with the camera capturing all those images, and I understand that your vision that you're painting for a touchless substation involves having a multitude of permanently wired in cameras there at the station, and I was curious if you've considered using a robot sentinel that is able to automatically deploy and either be remotely controlled, or for your type of touchless substation, it would most likely need to be on an automatic geofence line that it could follow for a routine surveillance route. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are, if you've ever thought of and seen some of the vendors that have these robots, one of which is most popular, obviously, is the Boston Dynamics Spot Dog. That one's just so expensive and easily thievable that it makes it kind of not feasible for our substation use. However, there are some very tracked inspection robots that look appealing to us at SoCal Edison that are 400 pounds. It'd really take a driven couple people to run off with. That's all. Just curious if that would be an alternate, more lower cost installation for that touchless vision that you have versus having all the cameras permanently installed.
So I have considered that. You mentioned Boston Dynamics. I've talked to them about Spot the dog to do that. I told them I didn't want it for a gift. I had no desire to have that. That's just my mindset. I want to have, what I really want to have is like 100 cameras. They're all stitched together, and I have backup. If this camera goes out or doesn't function correctly, I have another camera that has an overlapping view. It may not be the best view, but it has an overlapping view. And we're able to, if we have a failure of a camera, then, or I'm calling them sensors. If we have a failure of a sensor, then we can get to that at our leisure whenever we need to. As far as having something else to guide around in there, I assumed that would be a maintenance nightmare through snow and bad weather and things like that. The cameras that we're looking at are very inexpensive. In fact, a lot of the first initial rollout that we've already looked at is solar powered with a battery that doesn't take live video all the time. It takes snapshots every once in a while. When something changes, it sees it and it takes a snapshot, sends it in wirelessly. And so those cameras, we're just going to, if they're magnetic, stick them on a hunk of steel someplace and be able to point them down where we need to go and tighten up the little guidance so we can get them where they need to point to, or band them to a wooden pole, or turn around and somehow attach them to the fence with a lag bolt or something. But they would be completely wireless. That's my envision of that. I also visited with a vendor who is transferring a few hundred milliwatts of energy wirelessly in the substation using radio waves. And so you put up a couple of antennas on your wireless sensor, it gathers enough energy, charges up the capacitor, lights up, takes a snapshot, takes a photo, and then returns back to a dormant state. And so that kind of technology is out there also. And you can set that up to either do it automatically or once the unit is powered up, it's got just enough knowledge, like with a PIC chip that takes just a few watts of energy to keep it powered up. It listens and can respond. And so that kind of technology is out there. It's being dispatched in power plants and things like that, where you do wireless communication and wireless energy transfer. Sounds a little crazy, and it might be. But my thought is no other objects running around in that station. Like you said, somebody could, you know, if it was a party town or somebody, you know, Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday today, somebody goes steals the dog and runs it down Bourbon Street or something. That would not be cool.
Hey,
But
wireless energy transfer doesn't sound crazy to me. I think that's really what solar powered devices are, right?
well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Think that.
Yeah, this company focuses a beam on a sensor, and it, through radio waves, transfers enough energy through that beam to excite it and get the sensors to work. Using it on vibration type sensors, there's no reason I can't use it for this too. But yeah, solar energy, I really want to be able to, my vision of this is, and I may not get my vision this year, but I'll eventually get it. And that is to be able to outfit a station with these sensors in a matter of a day, not taking anything out of service. I don't want a single clearance. I want to be able to install all this stuff at a distance that's eye level, or at least the right height, so we can look at these gauges and stuff up here. One of the things that when I talked to Boston Dynamics, they talked about Spot, the robotic dog, and I said I need Jeremy, the giraffe, because I wanted to be able to look up in these windows, which is somewhat comical, but you know what I mean. If you're down here and you look up this window, that doesn't really do you much good. You can't see in there. But if I was able to set a camera like right here on the steel, facing this way, something that's wireless, well, wireless communication is done. It's just powering it up that is a little bit of an issue, and solar can be done there too. And so that's really my vision. I want to keep multiple cameras going. So if I lose a camera, it doesn't stop the whole system. Does that help, Mark?
Thank you, Doug. Fabulous.
I gave Stephen Martin from PowerLink had I don't know if you can see the chat, Doug, but he had mentioned, and thank you, Stephen. I also, if you want to speak, I unmuted. You're able to. It's just he talked about you know, using a hosted service like this one for monitor communications, and it takes you to like a satellite website. So.
Oh, thank you. Yep. I plan to have a server in the building that's gathering all that data up, and a touch screen in the building. So when people walk in, walk in, they can look at the logs, they can look at whatever else brought them to that station, and they have local access. And then only one communication path out of there from that server to the cloud, which was replicated, and then back to a company-owned on-premise server. And so that way it would be transferred a couple of different ways to more of a firewall. We can firewall protect all this data. So.
Thanks, Doug.
Kate, you're on mute.
Darn it. I'm at the mute jar. There's a question that came in from Mary Foster. Have you updated your substation drawing to show online monitoring?
No, we have not. That's a good question, Mary. Once we get things rolled out, the drawing will have to be updated, specifications will have to be updated. Get this working for a year or so. What I would love to see is our new transformers coming in with cameras and acoustics and infrared already mounted on them. Let's say on this arrestor steel up here, it's already built into the device. Brett?
Hey, Doug, thanks for the information. I do have a quick question about, you referenced earlier about the need for installing monitors on the older equipment or equipment that are having trouble rather than the brand new equipment. Do you have a formalized risk or health assessment process set up to determine those, or is it still more of a lot of input from your substation guys out in the field?
And so we have a health analysis that we run automagically, and we through our, let's see, for like transformers and things like that. So that this runs every morning. We do this calculation, of course, and see if it comes up. But we have a health analysis that does that for us. And so we can do age or we can do health and update that column. And then I know equipment that is calling for help. And I can do it by a tap changer or just transformers alone. So what this does for us is allows us to see the worst health. And when we start looking at equipment that we want to put monitors on, part of it is also a risk is this equipment, does it have a backup? If it fails, is there a way we can pick it up? Yeah, we can pick it up easy because there's another backup. We can remotely switch it, boom, boom, done. I'm not so interested in maybe doing that. But as we look at this other equipment, some of it may not be. This Cherryville feeds about 7 farmhouses. I'm not sure I want to do much with that. Those 7 farmhouses are important to me, but maybe not worth the money it would take to do that. Maybe we should just upgrade the station or find another way to feed them. But this is kind of the algorithm that I use that runs in Cascade to identify the worst of the worst. Does that help?
Yep. Thanks, Doug.
There
One
was
thing
just, go ahead, Doug.
Sorry. One thing I would like to mention as I look at this, we talk about DGA being the creme de la creme. I also hold a lot of value in furan analysis. That's not something I can monitor. I mentioned a couple of times, at least in my presentation, that we need to take data from here and here and here and here and port this all together. And that's exactly what this dashboard does for us. We have data coming from our maintenance management system, from the inspections, from the DGA analysis, from the lab results, from on-site sensing, monitors, all that stuff all kind of folds together here. And then you're able to come up with some information to actually read something. Just putting a monitor on as a blanket statement is not successful. In my opinion, I think it's a good way to get a false sense of security and end up with a bunch of failures that you're not expecting. So I hope that helps explain that a bit.
Okay, and then we'll take one more question before we move to, wait, Sapphire raised his hand, so I want to let him too. While I take him off mute, Mary asked another question. Have you had any good catches from breaker monitoring?
Not yet, because I don't think that's fully matured. It's a good question, Mary. We really haven't had that. One of the things I would like to get done, and I have not gotten it done, I think a lot of breaker monitoring needs to be done through the relays. And then, of course, when you start attaching communication to the relays, then you can start getting yourself in trouble with NERC SIP and things like that. I think there's a lot of value there. You kind of got to figure that out. We've been working with Schweitzer on a program to do that, and I think we do have that. I'm going to have funding this year to be able to explore that option. I think that will help a bunch. Mary, that's a really good question, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I've not fully vetted that out.
All right, Doug. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for sharing. It was a really good presentation. Really good things to think about there. Just a couple of questions per this approach. Is your operations center watching all of this data for the substation, or is it other people within substations that be defined to watch this?
So this dashboard that I presented here is available to all in the company. Anybody who wants to look at this data is available. This is not proprietary data. And as you can see, people come in and make comments, and we'll have comments that are that people can, that you, if you look at it, you can type in a note and then you can make comments and get that open. So our operations folks are busy doing the operations. I don't want them doing these types of decisions. My maintenance engineers, my asset management engineers, my reliability engineers, my management group that has access over the construction and maintenance group of the substations all have access to this stuff. So we use this on a regular basis to make decisions on what work to do. If we want to look at tap changers that are having issues, they simply just select that part of the ribbon and they got tap changers that are issues that we need to go and do maintenance. The last time it was sampled, some of the values, we need to get some of this stuff really cleaned up on here. This has only been available for my company about 2 years now, and we're really knocking it out. We've had other parts of our company that have focused on this information, and we're providing it to them. By the way, Power BI, if you have a company phone, Evergy phone, that has all of the security software and stuff on it, Power BI is on your phone. And so when people walk into the substation and they go, I wonder if this tap changer has an issue, they simply just open up Power BI, select this part of the ribbon, boom, there it is. They know where it's at. I've also done a little bit of playing around with QR codes on equipment. And so you walk up to a piece of equipment, you take your phone, you click on the QR code, and it brings up all the information for that piece of equipment. So getting the information in the people's hands is hugely powerful. Now, that information needs to be from all kinds of things, the monitors, the testing, the lab analysis, all of the stuff that you can get put together. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does help. Thank you for that. And then I guess as a general, it's like senior management support for this. Obviously, the investment is a little bit more than what a typical substation goes through. So are you going around and doing this for all your substations? Are you doing it for your key substations? What's the future plan from your perspective?
So as far as like this dashboard you see here, we have a program where we do yearly oil samples. This dashboard includes all oil field equipment, boom, all tap changers. The entire company, there's nobody left out of this deal. Now, as far as doing the monitors, those are only key locations in key spaces, key places. As far as the rest of the analysis go, we analyze whatever we can get our hands on and post it on these dashboards. And so, yeah, it's across the entire company. There's nobody left out of this. Whatever data we can get, especially like battery data. Any data that comes off a monitor, any data that comes off of a test set, we're bringing that stuff together and we're able to visualize that. So yeah, I think it makes sense. And the portion of the 3D photos that I was showing you earlier, that's just something we're getting kicked off. We don't have that every place. And my envision of that is to be either at key locations or be in those locations that are just scattered out all over the company that take an hour or two to drive to. We cover both states, Kansas and Missouri, and there's a fair amount of drive time in cases.
Yeah, thank you. And then just, sorry, one more question. So would you say, like, going forward that you've modified your basic construction design to make sure that you're getting all these sensors and stuff for any new substation that you're building right now?
Yeah, so we don't use a lot of oil monitors right now, but we've changed our specifications. So only those larger transformers that we're going to put GSUs, big autos, things like that, that will be coming on there as a standard package coming from the vendor, be installed from the vendor. The breakers all come with breaker sensors or breaker monitors on them. And we have that. Some of that stuff is not lit up yet. Some of it is, but as a standard piece of equipment, it comes from the manufacturer installed. And so I hope that helps. But there is a struggle, and that's getting enough people inside your organization that have the knowledge to be able to connect all that stuff up and be able to get it all connected up securely.
Great. No, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. We really appreciate it. And I see there's a couple more questions. We'll definitely get you a response after this, and we can always, I think many of you know Doug, so you can reach out to him directly. I think he's okay with that.
Yep.
Or you can come through me and we can get you in touch with him. I know he always has a lot of great conversations and a lot of utilities reach out to him. So thank you so much. And we will definitely send out some information after this to follow up. And then just if y'all stick here, it's just Jack is going to talk, Jack Shearman, the CEO of UMS Group, is going to talk just a little bit about the path forward of the substation group and how we're going to continue these webinars and continue this good talk and just give you some information on what's coming up next so you can kind of understand where we're going with the program.
Hello, thanks, Kate, and thanks, Doug. Great presentation as always. Always love having you to follow. You know, you're a tough act. So I've can you see my presentation, Kate? Somebody needs to turn me on as in it's a presenter, I think.
Oh, you're not a presenter?
Oh no, here I am. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Yep.
Okay, good. So let me first say this is an exciting time to be in the utility industry. It's an exciting time to be focused on substations. What Doug is talking about here is exciting and visionary, and I'm here to tell you that there are other pockets of innovation like that going on all over the world. We have clients in Australia who are with us here today. Thanks for joining here, Steve. I heard your voice earlier from Parling, Queensland, who's one of the most, they were the earliest mover. They moved in 2004 to fully automate monitoring in their substations. Fingrid in Europe has gotten to the point, Doug, where they've actually conducted competitions to invite startups to come to them with new ideas for new technology on sensors and so on. They've now got a slew of pull off the adhesive monitor and stick the sensor on the piece of equipment you're monitoring. It's all wireless, it's battery operated, it's 5 years, no changes, no cables, don't even have to worry about wireless or running cables. But really exciting things, lots to share, and no better mechanism for that than a forum like this where you can share openly and where people are not just willing to speak to you, they are proactively interested in helping you accelerate your change program. So I'd like your input on this. This is not intended to be a fiat or dictate. This is just what we're currently thinking in terms of where the program is going this year. And we'll distribute a copy of this after the session today. Background, this program has been running since 2013. I think Kate has been actively engaged in running it for the last 5 years. Moving ahead, we've made some major innovations and advances in some of our other learning consortia. The wildfire program that is operating in the U.S. West Coast and Australia, as well as across Canada, and is now moving into Europe, is kind of at the spearhead for us of this innovation. We are developing technology leaderboards, going out there and through research and then discussions with utility clients, documenting who the vendors are in each technology solution area. What are the pros and cons? And then mapping the capabilities of each product offering, and then bringing that back into a central location. We have Tech Truth sessions that entail a presentation by a vendor who's been invited by one of the participating companies, utility. 20 minutes of presentation by the vendor, 10 minutes Q&A, and then the vendor is excused, and the utilities get to talk to the host utility and ask the real questions. How did it work? What were the strengths and weaknesses? What would you do differently if you had to do it over again? Do you recommend these guys? And so on. Also this year, we are developing a substation maturity model. So it's one thing to have a laundry list of best practices, but to have a list of best practices across all of the dimensions of what it takes to be successful in substation maintenance, operations, and asset management is something that A, just doesn't exist today, and B, even if it did exist today, would have trouble keeping up with all of the innovation and new technology that's coming. And so that is becoming a piece of this program as we move forward. The general structure of the program, there's an annual conference where we come together for about 3 days and we hear presentations like the one Doug just made. Well, Doug's would be probably top 10%, I guess, Doug. But similar to the presentation Doug made about strategies, operating and investment initiatives, new technologies. And then throughout the year, we have best practice interest groups that come together and share experience and new ideas. There are benchmarking and surveys so that you can answer questions like, why should we be investing this money? What are other companies doing in this area in terms of investment? How do we compare in terms of O&M, staffing levels, et cetera? All important for making the business case for your bosses or for even the regulator, why these investments are going to be needed going forward. And then the technology leaderboard that I mentioned, I'll show you an example of in a minute, and then optional opt-in projects where companies come together. If for example, Doug wanted to do some research on camera technology and wanted to get information from all around the world, there might be 4 or 5 companies that would come together and work on that and then put together a report to the rest of the group on what they had discovered. Looking forward, the technology leaderboard this year is going to focus on asset and risk management. So we'll be looking at all technology associated with asset management, risk management, maintenance, and operations optimization in the substation, how to better digitalize our substations and the information flow from them, better address key risks, and support the push by many companies toward this substation, this touchless or touchless substation, as the folks at PECO have migrated to. But to reduce or eliminate fieldwork, reduce the number of inspections, reduce our O&M costs, and perhaps in the best case scenario, substitute CapEx for OpEx and reduce risk in the process. So this year will focus on asset and risk management in terms of all the technologies out there. And next year it'll focus on workforce enablement. As we think about structuring a technology leaderboard, this page makes or lays out the approach we use. So if we think about the enablers for any technology, any asset monitoring, risk assessment, investment optimization software that you would want, you need information. As Doug said, information is expensive, insight is priceless. And so you're talking about here field data collection, condition monitoring equipment, new sensor technology, cameras, communication networks, hardware and software, data lake or cloud services to store that information so it's available, and then an asset register software. Where are all my assets and what do I know about all my assets? And then in each one of those areas, there are domains that feed them. Condition monitoring, you can have different monitors for batteries, different vendors, different styles, different technologies even. And so understanding the full range of technologies out there, technologies needed first, then technologies available, then vendors with specific solutions. And many companies we speak to, when we take them through this, come back and say, you know, I thought I had my battery monitoring vendor locked in, but now that I see the information required from my battery plant, to support the rest of this asset health and risk optimization, I'm going to need to go back and revisit some of those earlier decisions we made. And so if I take that cycle of information gathering, validation, storage, and access, and start to look at the use cases for that, I've got proactive failure avoidance. So real-time risk assessment. As Doug said, you can't be managing risk unless you have semi-real-time, in many cases, or close to real-time data coming from your equipment. But there are many new vendors, many software offers in terms of real-time risk assessment, where they'll pull in your DGA analysis. Of course, they integrate to your oil lab samples and so on, but they'll pull that all into an integrated asset health index score with machine learning to get better and better at predicting failures. But they'll take that and not only look at where the asset score is, but based on the real-time or semi-real-time path or trend, they'll actually predict when these various dimensions or metrics are going to breach my standards. So if I'm looking at 9 gases, acetylene, ethylene, methane, et cetera, I may be well below the threshold, but trending up, and being able to forecast that in 7 days, this is going to break that lower threshold. And in 15 days, it's going to be something that I need to be thinking about taking out and mitigating. Those are vitally important elements to being able to do asset risk management more effectively. The EAM, Enterprise Asset Management software, feeds your asset health and risk analysis and decision support software that can deliver optimized maintenance decisions, moving from time-based to condition-based, and escalating the frequency with which you're gathering data when a piece of equipment goes on the troubled list. And obviously can move to touchless substations and even ad hoc inspections on my substations when equipment condition warrants it. And then, of course, the EAM feeds your ISO 55000, asset lifecycle strategies, risk assessments, and data governance, and your asset health and risk feeds your strategic portfolio optimization and investment strategy. So that's kind of the approach. Now, what we've done is we've taken each one of those pieces and identified the vendors, the most commonly found vendors out in each of those areas. So here you see you've got your Callisto, which is owned now by Doble. GE owns both Hydran and Kelman on your DGA monitors, but you've got a full host of others, breaker monitoring packages, relays, the cap banks, camera systems, et cetera. And so all of those, what we do is we go out and we bring them together into that map, and then off of each of that map, we develop a scoring framework where we identify, in this case, strategic fit, economic benefit, and feasibility, so implementation, cost effectiveness, and so on. We bring them all together, and so you can see by vendor and by product, you can see how they score on each dimension. And then if you click over, you can see all of the information gathered on each vendor. And you can see that, you know, you've got the product information, the vendor information, the various product capabilities, screenshots, and then utility references or recommendations as well. And so you can see ABB, Siemens, Sentinel, various enabling monitors, and then all the way over here to the mainline EAMs, Copperleaf, Oracle, and SAP. Each of these we've mapped out. So one of the things we'll be doing is putting together a working group in the program this year, and we'll be defining which vendors you want us to go out after, to gather data, to bring together references, and to put together this tool, we're calling it a technology leaderboard. We've already done these 40 vendors. I know that if we extend into the new technologies, so there are new sensor technologies for infrared, for partial discharge, for using LiDAR in new ways. If we start to bring them in, companies that make sensors that detect new anomalies, vibration, acoustic monitoring and signature analysis, torque, momentum, all kinds of new sensors are being applied to identifying anomalies in breaker and other assets in the substation health. And so what we'll do is we'll pull that all together as part of the program this year, and each member of the program will have access to it. So Kate, any questions, first of all, before I turn it back over to Kate to talk in the few minutes remaining about next steps for the program?
Jack, just a question about how do you get other vendors, I guess, on the your list of technology leaderboards, and what's the appetite, I guess, to expand it further than the 40 that you've got?
So I would say we have an insatiable appetite. Thanks, Steve. No, we're interested in making this as useful as possible if it's really going to serve the needs of the participants in this program. It needs to have not only all of the standard vendors and standard offers so that you can differentiate among them, and you can see how the standard offers map to both your need and to the new offers that are emerging from startups and new technology companies. But it really needs to have a strong discovery function that is out there talking to our utility members in the forum to identify anytime a new vendor has come pitching them an idea. I'd like to get to the point where in the portal where the technology leaderboard will be hosted for access by everyone, there's a message board where everyone can just go and enter, here's a vendor that came, here's what they pitched, like to know, does anybody have any experience with them? We'll take that out and periodically, maybe once a month, once a quarter, we'll send out a summary of that to the full group and say, hey, has anybody heard about any of these companies? If so, can you make 5 minutes available? We'll give you a call and hear what you think about them. We'll then document all of that information, pull it together, but we will also call the vendors. And you know, these the small vendors are always very interested in becoming known to the industry. Their biggest challenge is the tyranny of distance and time zones and lack of knowledge of who at a utility I should talk to have my capabilities and offerings be viewed as relevant to even be evaluated. This can be a very efficient path for them to use to accomplish that objective. And by having it go through the screen that we provide can dramatically reduce the potential overwhelm of having every vendor send you information. This can be there when you are ready for it, when you decide it's time for you to tackle, for instance, partial discharge monitoring in your substation for instrument transformers, which is in Europe has become almost a mission critical pursuit, where they are outfitting all their substations because up until recently they had to erect ballistic barriers around any instrument transformer that had an anomalous signature and partial discharge for fear of explosion and shrapnel and damage and injury to, so that it's been an HSE concern. So these would all go on the portal for the program, and there'd be a message board there to just quickly and easily log it or send an email to the program manager, in this case, Kate. Okay, Steve?
Great, thanks.
Good
Okay.
question. Thanks, Steve. We do have one question from Mary Jack. Is the leaderboard going to also track service from the vendors? I believe yes, but
How do you mean service, Mary? Services that they offer?
Am I off mute?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are.
Okay. I mean, once you purchase of the equipment, how does the service stand up? Is it, you purchase the equipment and are you continuing to get service on issues with the equipment? Especially with the smaller companies, are you receiving that type of service afterwards?
Excellent question. Yes, of course. All of the information. So our view and the way we're doing this in the wildfire program is that all information other than pricing is relevant. And you can say they're reasonably economic, but we can't have this forum be shared information about the pricing or cost of individual products without running afoul of anti-competitive behavior and jeopardize the ability to share all of the other useful information. So we have some very clear guidelines that we publish, and then we reinforce at the beginning of every conversation like this about here's what we can talk about, here's what we want to make sure we're not talking about. But everything else, service quality, ease of reach, access, their ability to deliver on time and at budget what they said they were going to do, all of that kind of performance information, the reliability of the solution, additional use cases that you didn't anticipate that materialized after you had it in place. All of that would be incorporated into it. Right. If there are no other questions, Kate, do you want to go through the annual conference?
yeah,
Next
sure.
steps.
So of course, thank you, Jack. Great presentation. And again, if anybody has additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we'll follow up and give our contact information. So we really would love Evergy reached out to us. Again, they're such a great part of us and would really love to host an in-person conference. We really want to make this happen. Mark, I definitely understand your point. So if we can have it in person, we will. And if we can maybe put certain portions to be online or through webinars, we will definitely look into that option to make everyone feel comfortable. But the goal is to try to have that in-person conference. I think hopefully by, the fall time, things will be even better, but understand there's always, we want to accommodate everything. So we will definitely look into different things. Usually our conference is an annual conference in end of September, October, fall timeframe. We try to make sure, again, depending on what the type of conferences are out there, we try to schedule around those other conferences because I know fall is a big time of year. Darcy, I believe is going to be Kansas City. If anybody at Evergy wants to correct me, but somewhere in Kansas City. I'm still working with Bryson, Doug, Bruce, Jennifer, everybody on the team to come up exactly where. We can let you know that information very shortly. Hopefully it'll follow this meeting, in the next few days or next week. Bryson, I work with Bryson Cyphers. He also is at Evergy. He has some tours and topics ideas already. We just want to confirm those. So I'll get that information out to you. But again, just keep that in your mind if it's something that you're open to and attending in person. Again, I think that we've all adapted to this webinar kind of world that we're in, but I know people are ready to get back together in person. So if it lends itself, we'll do it. Quarterly webinars, I think that this is a great way to get together, have, as Jack was saying, have conversations going. You know, as Doug had a great presentation, we're going to have another one next quarter by another one of our participants, but very similar in style. Could be a tech truth. A vendor might come in. Hopefully we'll get that soon. So just we'll look out for those. Definitely be more communicative about that, give you the information as soon as possible. So look out for those. Another area, a rich benchmarking database and online analytic reporting tool. So a lot of the things that we collect in the substation over the years, whether it's data, charting, things like that, we are going to make it available in this type of tool. So that's another piece of the program that we're adding. We're also going to have an online portal. Many of you that are on this call has been part of the Substation Best Practice Collaborative for many, many years. And there's much rich information, presentations out there that every once in a while, someone will ask me, can I have that presentation from 2007? And I'll have to kind of cull through everything. So we are going to make some type of database available so that you have that information for you and can look back on it. Because even though things may not be relevant every year, they do come back. And we have seen many times my participants come back and look for presentations. As Jack had already mentioned, maturity readiness model development, we'll be reaching out and you know, we want you to be able to have input into that and help develop that. That's why we do it. Again, we are a facilitator of this program. You guys really make this program happen, and we really look to you. You know, as much time as you can give. We do pride ourselves as taking on as much work, but we do look for input when we can and to make that successful. And then, you know, the last one is define working groups. There may be specific areas that people want to look into within the group. As far as a shared pilot, a deep dive, we're very open to that as well. And we do facilitate those types of things. It has been successful. We did it once in the past in Substation. I know it's been successful in other programs. So there's just some great things coming up for the program. Again, the conference, keep that in mind. We'll get more information out to you soon. The quarterly webinar is just a great way for you guys to get together and collaborate and talk and ask questions. So with that, I mean, we're almost at the hour. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, Mark, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, real quick. I just was going to mention I'm not averse to traveling, but I know that we can't travel my whole team and they may want to sit in. And I just thought that'd be most excellent if that virtual option would be. Also wanted to mention the use of a discussion board. You know, there's another site that we log into where we have a discussion board. And that would be really neat if you had a discussion board the same, you might have it and I just don't know about it, but just throwing it out there, that's really a neat way to on the fly get some feedback from our fellow utilities and do a little on the fly benchmarking.
It's a really great point. We do have something, we do something, but I send out an email. I think a discussion board would even be a better idea to kind of get more feedback. So we'll definitely look into that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate 90 minutes of your precious time. We hope to be speaking to you very shortly. After this call, we'll be reaching out just about what's coming up and next steps for the program. And as I said in the beginning of the call, feel free to reach out to any one of us at any time. We're here. Have a great night, day.
Thank you all. Great job, Doug. Team.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Doug
you.
and Jack. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.